Well, my dad was a billionaire, mum was a billionaire. I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a private helicopter taking me to school every day, and I lived in a castle. But I didn't. My life was literally nothing. Again, it quite dull. It's like working class parents. Mum and dad got divorced when I was 7. Dad went bankrupt. I don't actually believe that I have some magical formula because I don't think there is a magical formula for management. I think a lot of people think there is. You're either a good manager or you're not. I don't. I believe if you really care about people and you're really sincere and authentic with them, and they can see that you're willing to get in the trenches with them, people will do more for you than they do for others.
What advice would you give them in terms of what they should do next, as opposed to wait what you did, obviously, to go that place that you went, not having that support?
Don't underestimate community. Don't underestimate the value other people and other humans can bring. And make your life's mission to spend 1 day per month volunteering and helping people less fortunate than yourselves.
Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Spencer Lodge has joined me in the studio today. Spencer, welcome.
Thanks very much for having me, Andrew. Nice to see you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed our previous conversation, so I'm looking forward to today. Why don't you start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and where your current focus is?
I'm the most boring person in the world because I've built businesses that are not in particularly interesting industries. I wish I was a racing car driver or a fighter pilot or something, but I got into wealth management and since got into insurance and corporate wellness. And so I own businesses that do that kind of stuff.
Great. And then when you're not doing that kind of stuff working, what do you do in your personal life?
My personal life used to be Friday night down the pub, Saturday football, and that was a big part of my life until I grew up. And then at the age of around 42, 43, I was exposed to people that were arguably suffering in a way that I hadn't ever imagined before. And it created a big shift in my life and forced me to try and go down a path of wanting to learn about people's suffering and try and do something to help. And that's been a big part of every spare hour that I have now. And enormously rewarding.
Good. Well, we're looking forward to hearing more about that, but we need to understand where it is you've come from. So we can't determine where we're born and what we're born into. So for you, tell us a little bit about your childhood and those early experiences.
Yeah, well, my dad was a billionaire. Mum was a billionaire. I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a private helicopter taking me to school every day, and I lived in a castle. But I didn't. My life was literally nothing. Again, it quite dull. It's like working class parents. Mum and dad got divorced when I was 7. Dad went bankrupt, and I was essentially exposed to 2 people that started all over again and had to work to try and make something of themselves. And I think that rubbed off on me. Seeing how hard they worked every day, the sacrifices they made, taught me that indirectly that work ethic really mattered. And so even though I struggled at school because of various, issues, the truth is excuses, school wasn't for me. And so when I went to work, I had to go and do the same as them, which was, through grit and determination and hustle and grind and hard work, try and be somebody.
Sure. And I know you've spoken about this before, and it's something I'm passionate about, and it's difficult to identify when we're younger. But if you look back, and that hard work ethic, which I also had, I think a generation, had that. What did that mean for the way that you were leading yourself at that point in your life as you went into the workplace?
Well, I think predominantly it was my mum, because I spent more time with my mum. But my mum had 3 jobs, and when I used to go home from school, my mum was never able to pick me up on time, so I used to walk for about 1 or 2 miles on my way home from school until she would drive by and pick me up. And although at the time I was kind of unhappy that was my scenario, I was realizing that you've got this lady here that just wanted to provide for her family and try and make something of herself. And that really kind of resonated with me. But then as I got a little bit older and I went to secondary school, I then was bullied quite badly by Justin Zimmerman and Paul Fowler, who I'll never forget. And they created a huge amount of motivation for me to kind of stick two fingers up for them and prove them wrong. And that was a real kind of like an energy booster, a turbocharge to my thinking and then behavior, because I just needed to prove them wrong. And so that drove me even further through the chosen the career that I took.
Yeah. So tell us more about that sort of early career. Which direction did you take, and how were you manifesting as a manager and leader at that point?
So I was started off in the photocopier industry. I used to sell office equipment in the City of London. So my patch was EC3, 100 cold calls a day, 100 door knocks a day, get out there, find prospects in the B2B space. So banks, law firms, insurance companies, underwriters, these types of companies that are all in the heart of the city. They were my target clients, and I was exposed to a lot of people being successful. I used to watch the stockbrokers walk down the street and insurance brokers and go past Lloyd's of London and just look at these people that just looked cool and were successful. And so that was a big part of what my life looked like. But then as I went forward and I got into the world of financial services and moved overseas, it wasn't until I was 26 that I was given somebody to be responsible for. And that was kind of my first lesson in management, although I didn't realize I was having a lesson. And I liked being able to help that person go from where they were to a better place. The feeling was arguably a selfish feeling. It made me feel good. And I realized that I would get a lot out of it if I did it for more people. And, one by one, that grew. And I became, through a student of management, a student by reading lots of stuff. I wasn't, because I was overseas, it wasn't easy to go on courses and go back to the UK and study. But also I was surrounded by people, so not surrounded, but I had great leaders ahead of me. And I know how they used to make me feel. And I always felt like I was seen and I was heard and I was valued. And they encouraged me at the right time, and they'll give me a clip round the ear at other times, but all what seems to be with my best interest at heart. And that clearly got the best out of me. And what I've learned from great leaders or great managers is they understand that not everybody's the same, and they're able to understand each individual, and maybe in the early days at a surface level, but as they get to know them at a much deeper level, and try and find where their buttons are, and try and find if they can find those buttons and push those buttons to get those individuals to perform. And that's what I learned the skill of, and applied that in business for myself. And that then grew and grew and grew into bigger and bigger and bigger teams, until the largest team I was managing was around about 300 people, and a great buzz that I got from people being successful.
Great, and we'll move into that in a bit more detail. But what I'm really interested in is, bear in mind how you've described the childhood and also that bullying episode, and what that made you feel in terms of I will show. And I sensed a bit of sort of anger in that when you were saying it, probably back then. In the 20s, what was it that was holding yourself back? So what were the things, the demons or the things that were still in your head, even though you'd moved into that management role of one person? What was holding you back then?
Well, again, you have, when you spend time with people that have been to university, and have, look more professional and don't have such an accent, maybe a bit more of a plum in their mouth, you kind of feel inferior. You have an inferiority complex. And that was something that I never thought I was worthy, never thought I was good enough. And that was something that used to weigh quite heavily on me. But then you balance that with I will show you to the bullies from school, and the bullies from school trying to prove something to them overrode everything. They owe everything. I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about them. I would come out of a meeting thinking about them. I would, in all the weirdest of places, they'd come into my head, and it was just this really deep anger at what they'd done to me, and the sense of injustice that propelled me forward to want to show them that as Tony Robbins says, the greatest success is the greatest revenge is massive success.
Sure. So carry on. And in terms of, because I'm interested as well in terms of what else is around there, because as you've indicated as well through things you've said in the past, as we move on and we see other people that are suffering even more than we have, we recognize the importance of we as opposed to I. And you were at that point, you were very much focused on I and how I could succeed, had a person to manage, and then manage more and more and more and more. So what about in your 30s? How was that changing for you then in terms of your recognition about leadership and how it showed up?
Well, from my 30s onwards, all recognition came from team performance. So there was no more in my, probably from 2005 to 35. So 35 onwards, it was all team only. And getting the best out of people rather than getting the best out of myself became the job. And presents a huge challenge. But I read a book that was really, really profound to me at the time. Jack Welch wrote a book called Winning. And he was the CEO of GE for many years. And he wrote this book and he talked about leadership. And he said, take your top 20%, he said, and give them one-to-one love and treat them any way they need to be treated to help them. He said, take your next level down, which is the 60%. And he said, train those people as a group. He said, spend time with them as a group. Don't spend time with them one-to-one. And he said, because they're deciding whether they're going to go into the top 20% or they're going to fall to the bottom 20%. And then he also said to me, so the book also said, the bottom 20%, you have to let go. And you have to let go of them for their own benefit. They don't fit in the environment. They don't sell it in the environment. Then you're not getting the best out of them. They're not getting the best out of you. So remove those people and give them a chance to go and find what can make them happy and enable them to excel. And I took that really seriously. And when I managed people, it was, trying to focus on being really honest about that. And I know if you keep the bottom group in, what tends to happen is the culture is impacted through too much negativity. And I was always highly aware of culture. I wanted there to be a positive environment, a happy environment. I hated negativity. I hated cynical people, because to me, you can be optimistic or nothing else. There's nothing else but optimistic to be. People talk about the opposites, but the opposites don't bear thinking about. And so I wanted to create an optimistic environment, a can-do environment, a place where, together we can be greater, we can support each other and we can love each other and we can go, because we were living overseas, remember, so people didn't have their family networks around them necessarily. And just create that family where, we're in it together. We're a team, we're a gang. It's kind of us against the world. And that created, and again, through learning from family members that were in the military, created this kind of, and I know it's cheesy, but it's like this kind of like this gang, this platoon, this group, whatever you want to call it, of men and women that fought for each other. And that was a great feeling, being a leader in that environment.
Sure. And then during that period, let's stick to the 30s for now in terms of that learning. As you were leading teams and it became more about the performance of the team and not you, and the challenge you described about that, what did that mean for you in terms of how you were measuring yourself, in terms of how you were developing yourself when the focus was on the team?
Well, I wasn't measuring myself. I was being measured by others. And so being highly competitive, I was measuring myself against my peers. So there were, I think, 7 people in equal positions to me around the world, something like that. And so those 7 people were my competition. So I had to get my group of people to outperform their groups of people for me to feel good about myself. And, very selfishly, that gave me something to focus on as, my competitive element for me. I don't actually believe that I have some magical formula, because I don't think there is a magical formula for management. I think a lot of people think there is. You're either a good manager or you're not. I don't. I believe if you really care about people and you're really sincere and authentic with them, and they can see that you're willing to get in the trenches with them, people will do more for you than they do for others. And so that manifested itself throughout my 30s and enabled me to build big teams of people, because competitors in other companies wanted to come and work because they'd heard the environment was great. And arguably, we were competing with other companies that were doing pretty much the same thing, but we wanted it more. And everyone has their own story. And when you learn about everybody's stories, other people had bullies, other people had parents that had nothing they wanted to provide for. Some people had been adopted and fostered. Some people had not seen their parents for a long time. Some people had personal issues with various family members or friends. Everyone's got something going on in their lives that gives them some form of trauma that they either react to and use it as a tool or a weapon, or they allow it to literally be a saucepan lid crushing them down on a worktop and stopping them getting out and breathing. And it's the decision that people make. that really can unlock their potential. And I think teaching people how to make that decision and getting people to understand that they don't have to sit in the victim mentality or the poor me mentality or I've got an excuse mentality, by exposing them in a kind way, enabled people to get more out of themselves than we ever thought possible.
I'm glad that you've raised the reference to trauma there. I read a book that came out last year. I think it was Gabor Mate, The Myth of Normal. Mm-hmm. And the book talks about, for those that don't know in the audience, how he believes, and there's research to back this up now, that we're all born with intergenerational trauma. You know, we have trauma from our parents, from their ancestors. And if we can all accept that, and therefore it's not just people that have had really bad childhood experiences, I've got trauma or been in the army, and then we can all start to help each other, as you said, work through that, recognizing there's a gift in there somewhere. So I really appreciate you mentioned that. I guess what I'm really interested in as well is, and it may not have happened in the company you're speaking about, but as you were competing with those other people around you and trying to outcompete them, at some point you would have outcompeted them, got into a role where you were managing them. So did that ever happen for you, in the sense that those competitors suddenly became your team members?
No, mainly not, because they were in different parts of the world. So in the 30s, okay, I was in the Middle East, and so I had the smallest geographical region, but the largest production. So the Middle East was essentially the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Kuwait, and Qatar, one other country. They're very small countries, and yet we were competing with South America, Europe, Eastern Europe, the Far East. I mean, these were just monsters by comparison in terms of size. But my guys knew they were the underdogs, and I think being an underdog, if you're smart, can work for you. And we have a British tradition of being an underdog. We like to be the underdog. But also, if you used to watch, I used to watch the Olympics when I was younger, and Sebastian Coe and Steve Ovett and Steve Cram being the 1500 meters and the 800 meter runners. And they never led from the front. They always sat on the shoulder of the person in front. And that's what being an underdog is for me. It's that guy that's sitting behind and saying, okay, I'm on the underdog. You don't think I'm going to win? Okay, but I'm the underdog, so I've got an advantage because you don't expect me to win. And I think sitting on the shoulder, the person in the front always had to look back to see where the person in second place was. But the person in second place, Sebastian Coe, Steve Ovett, would sit there. And then you'd see them come around the last 200 meters, and it would become into 150 meters, 140, 130. And they'd be like, right, now I've got you, because there's too much of an angle as they came around that bend. And it was like, go. And they'd go at 110 meters, and they'd go and they'd sprint down the last 100 meters. And it was like, yes. And for me, it's like that, being in that place and then going through and being the winner. It's like, it's even better. It's even greater. And so I think that when you can create those types of environments in business, I think that win becomes so much more worthwhile.
Yeah, I get that. So let's say late 30s, let's talk about that particular time now. Had you at that point, and it's not always the same for everybody, created a sort of dream for yourself? I've been doing all this, I've been working hard, I'm doing well, I've got this team, it's all going well. Did you have a dream about what you wanted your life to be at that point?
No, I was making a huge amount of money, and I had no goal outside of more and better, which worked against me. You know, I then went on a journey of it was just, we had become so successful that you couldn't even compete with us. These other places around the world didn't have a chance. And we knew it, made me cocky, made me arrogant with those people, and made me, I was lost. I was lost. It was like, I didn't, when you can buy anything you want and it feels like nothing, it's a strange place to be. Saving up and buying my first pair of Nike trainers, I remember vividly, and how much they meant to me when I actually got them. That meant so much to me, and that experience disappeared. And so I had all this money, I had all this success, I was impenetrable, but I get bored quickly. And because I was bored, I started to self-sabotage, and I started to become a bit of a menace. And that's when the rails came off. And fortunately, there weren't drugs and alcohol involved, but for so many people, there is.
Absolutely. Are you happy to talk about what that then happened through that time and then after?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So it came to a stage, I was I'd had to go and have an operation on my spine because I'd had some damage to my spine, and so I went and had this operation, and I was in a lot of pain for about 6 months, and I got a call after having another MRI to see how it had done. I got a call from the doctors in London, and they said your operation's failed. We need to do it again. And after being in pain for that long, I mean, just to give some perspective, I was in hospital for 3 weeks, and I lost 16 kilos. So it just a huge amount of weight came off me. I didn't eat anything for 3 weeks, basically. And so I was weak. I was in pain, and so I felt a bit tortured. But while I was away, there were the things that I wasn't aware of is there were always people that wanted my role. And so to get my role, what a better way to do it than when I'm sick? And what better way to do it than to shit all over me while I'm sick? And again, I don't want to be a victim here because I have a big part to play in this. I gave them the opportunity to do that, so that's on me. But I got fired from that role, even though I was one of the founders. And getting fired from that role, that was the second thing that happened that week. And the third thing that happened that week, my partner of 7 years decided to leave me. And so all in the space of a week, these three things had come at me like, breeze blocks on my head. And then I agreed a deal to go on gardening leave for a year because I had been working all day, every day for so many years. I thought, this is a good idea. Let's go do that. So I was paid for the whole year. I accepted what had happened. I got my money for my shares given to me. So I was financially just no worries money-wise. And then 6 weeks into that 1 year journey, I'd been to see the friends I hadn't seen for so long. I'd spent time with family I hadn't seen for a long time. I'd done all the things that I wanted to do. And now what do I do for the next 10 and a half months? And what I did for the next few months is to go darker and darker and deeper into a deeper and deeper depression. And just couldn't see a way out, and just realized that I was of no value to anybody. I was insignificant because I spent all my life in this business. All my friends were in this business, and none of them were allowed to talk to me. So I didn't even have anyone to talk to. And then it was just a case of deciding one day, it's like, enough is enough. I don't need to be here anymore. And it wasn't dark, depression, sad, miserable. I was quite calm about it. So I flew back to London to say goodbye to my kids because I decided to kill myself. And planned to go and visit some buildings that I planned to jump off. And it was very calm. And my father lives in Newcastle. My father never comes to my house near London. But when I came, the driver brought me back from the airport. And as I came onto the driveway, my dad's car was on my driveway. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing here? And I went inside the house and he was inside. And I was like, how did you get in? He's like, the housekeeper let me in. And I'm like, what are you doing here? He said, I was down south in London. I thought I'd say hi. I've got a friend I wanted you to meet while I'm here. Why don't you go grab a shower and I'll make you some breakfast? So I went and had a shower. He made me some breakfast. He said, I want you to meet my friend. I'm like, who's your friend? What? It's only 15 minutes down the road. Anyway, my dad drove me to the Priory, which is a clinic, and introduced me to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist sat and spoke to me. And I hadn't told my dad anything, but my dad clearly knew something was happening. And he drove me to the Priory. I sat with a psychiatrist, and then I stayed in the Priory for 5 or 6 days being treated. And they were teaching me to understand the damage I would cause to my children if I took my own life. And I think had my dad not done that on that day at that time, I think I wouldn't be here right now. But he did. And even though it took many years to recover, I wasn't in a place where I'd ever commit suicide again. And so that was a positive, but it was a very dark time for a very long time. And I think that a lot of the time, I have this really weird relationship with mental health for others, because the truth is you don't know what's going on inside someone's head. I do know that the poor me victim types are not generally the ones that have the clinical depression. They're just the sad ones. I have learned that the ones that have the real troubles generally don't talk about them. So I have a friend called Azim Rafiq, and Azim was the famous cricket player that experienced racism when he was playing for Yorkshire Cricket Club. There was a huge scandal in the UK over the years about it, but he stood up to racism. But he was clinically depressed because of what they were doing to him. And I think a lot of the time we don't really spend time trying to understand people. And that changed me a lot. It really changed me a lot. But during that time, light came because I met a lady who changed my perspective on life. I met a lady who rescued children from Bangladesh, from the slums of Bangladesh, and the work she was doing really, really impressed me. And she made me feel welcome and seen and heard. And after a while, she introduced me to these children, and I saw their suffering and their pain. And whenever I was with them, I wasn't depressed. Whenever I was with them, I felt joy and hope and love. Whenever I was with them, I would be thinking, my worst day is still beyond the wildest dreams of their best day. And so that was the medication I needed. That was the stuff that enabled me to start focusing on gratitude and value. And it reshaped how I thought about what the word success meant as well. You know, success for many years was money and things, and recognition and job titles. But it made me realize that that's not success. That's just a measurement that's made in some part of the commercial world. Maria has got 11 Guinness World Records. She'd saved 682 children from the slums of Bangladesh. And I'm like, now that is the definition of success. And so when you're around somebody like that is super, really successful, yet has given their life to help these children, to me, there's a lot to be said about that. And I'm so grateful that I was exposed to her. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to work with more women like her, because they truly are heroes. And that's what's enabled me then to go on with a light at the end of the tunnel and some hope and some promise. And my life was turned around. And the person I am now is very different to the person I was before. I don't earn anywhere near as much as I did all those years ago, but I don't care. I'm not driven by money, but I don't care. The happiest times I have are when I can add value to them, or anybody else. And so I care really enormously about trying to help people. It really matters to me. And that may come, from people thinking that I'm a kind guy, but I look at helping others as being really selfish, because when I help others, I feel happy. And so that really has been the takeaway for me from this journey.
And thank goodness for your father, in that sense. And there are many people out there who relate to what you've been talking about, where to a certain stage in their career, it may even be now, if they're younger than we are, they've been successful. Everyone views them as successful. They've got the cars, they've got the watches, they've got all the material things. And yet inside, they're thinking, well, hold on a minute. If this didn't exist tomorrow, who would I be? If they get time to reflect on that. And sometimes they don't even do that. So with hindsight, what advice can you give to people out there that are on that trajectory at the moment and just starting to think, hold on a minute, something's not quite right, and they start either feeling the body? What advice would you give them in terms of what they should do next, as opposed to wait what you did, obviously, to go that place that you went, not having that support?
Don't underestimate community. Don't underestimate the value other people and other humans can bring. And make your life's mission to spend 1 day per month volunteering and helping people less fortunate than yourselves. That if you go into a space where you start wondering stuff, go and become a volunteer. Literally, just do it one Sunday a month. That's all you need. One Sunday a month. Go and work in a soup kitchen. Go and help the homeless. Go and help children that have autism, children of determination, for example. Go and spend a day with kids with determination. You'll start realizing very quickly how lucky you are. And I think it's when we realize how lucky we are, and we have gratitude forced upon us without asking for it. It reshapes how we think. But I think it all stems from trying to be in service of others. You notice often that people that are religious, so people that go to church every Sunday, generally don't tend to suffer with depression. Why is that? I'm not a religious person, but why is that? I never met, and I've got a religious family, but I never met anyone that was depressed or dark. There was always hope and faith and joy and love. And that means that there must be some value in that for some people. But I believe if you don't have that, then I really do believe that volunteering helps. We have Ramadan here in Dubai, where everybody fasts during the day. There's nothing cooler and nicer than going and getting all the food ready for the guys that are coming to eat their food when the sun sets. It's a cool experience, and you feel great because these guys are living on, arguably £2.50 and a packet of cigarettes a month type of incomes. Nothing really, yet I'm able to serve them. And what you do when you work in those environments is you start to realize that your ego is something that works against you, not for you, you start to realize that you're actually all equal. And when I go climbing mountains and stuff, when you climb a mountain and it's a dangerous situation, it doesn't matter whether you're the CEO of a bank, okay, or you're a dustman. We're all equal on that mountain, hanging on there for dear life, trying to get to where we're going. No one is more important than the other person. And I think when you do that, you have that experience. When you go and do that as a volunteer and you help people that are in more need than you and less fortunate than you, I think that levels everyone as well. And I think we need that as human beings. I think it's good for some inner workings, some psychological workings, because you can never be pissed off when you help others. You can never be pissed off when you're kind. You can never. That's another thing you need to do. Make it your mission every single day to be kind to one person. That could be the security guard, the guy at the petrol station. That could be the neighbour. Be kind. I don't mean saying good morning to them. The guy at the petrol station, stop for 5 minutes and say, how's your day going, mate? Just chat to him for 5 minutes. The guy that's a security guard in your building of the office you go to, go and grab him a coffee, okay, and a bacon roll or whatever it might be that's nearby, and just say, just thought I'd bring you a gift. I know you work long hours. I just want to say I really appreciate you. That guy's life will just blow up in that moment. He'll beam from ear to ear. And I promise you, never, ever again, as you go into your building, will anyone get the VIP treatment as much as you, because people love to feel like they're seen and heard. That's the thing that Maria's girls said to me. I said to Maria, why do these girls like me? Why are they so connected to me? And she said to me, Spence, with you, I asked them, and you make them feel seen and heard. And it's an easy thing to say, but it's very emotional when I think about it, because these children are at 12 years old and married to 30-year-old men and forced to have babies, when they have their first period, and put into horrific situations, growing up in the slums of Dakar. And he makes me feel seen and heard. Wow. It's a privilege. It really is. And I get to experience that. And I think everyone has the opportunity to. Just get off the telly, get off the sofa, put the Cheetos down, stand up, type in volunteering near me in your Google thing, and I'm pretty sure you'll find somewhere in 5 minutes that you can do this week.
Love that. Thanks for sharing. We're coming towards the end of our time, Spencer. I don't want it to in a way, but let's finish with, since you saw the light and you were guided that way into the life you were describing, what's happened to you since then? And indeed, what are you going to be in service of in the future?
So we went on to make a documentary about human trafficking for Netflix, which will have its premiere in November, where we tell the story of 3 heroes. My podcast has been going now for a number of years, with 300 and whatever it is episodes in, 6 years in. And I'm able to tell the stories of these people that have suffered. And I'm very privileged and proud to do that. And my life, I'm 54, for the next 54 years until I reach 108, my focus is on trying to make someone's day a bit better than it was before they saw me. And I don't need to worry about making money. I don't need to worry about, where, and I've got friends that are younger than me that are in the watches and the flash cars at the moment. And I'm like, it just doesn't matter. And it's funny, as I get older, it just doesn't matter. But I just want to help people. I've got a business that I hope to sell over the next 3 years, and all of the people in the business are going to benefit from that. And I want to make sure that everybody in the company, because some of them, the amounts of money they may get, even for some of us, it may not seem like a lot of money. This is life-changing money. And I'm on a mission now to get the businesses into a position where they can be sold, there can be an earn-out period, and everybody in the company can walk away or walk to something else knowing that their family home is built and paid for, their kids' schooling is paid for, their grandmother's cancer treatment has been paid for, or whatever it is that they need that money for.
Super. And if people out there are interested in contacting you to find out more about you and what you're doing, what's the best way for them to get hold of you, Spencer?
Go. You'll find me Spencer Lodge on Instagram, spencer.lodge. You'll find me on LinkedIn. If you go to my website, spencerlodge.tv, I'm there. You can find me anywhere. But I would ask, okay, send me a voice note if you want to ask me a question. I'll gladly respond to anybody that's got a question for me. And if you've got an inspiring story to share with me and you might want to tell it on my podcast, I'd love to hear from you.
Lovely. Well, Spencer, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. It's been fantastic to hear your story. Story which obviously in very different periods of your life has been, extremes. So I really appreciate you sharing it. I'm sure everyone out there has learned something and taken something away. So thanks again for being on the show today.
I appreciate you having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.